It was the most surreal out-of-body experience from the moment I found out I was pregnant through the delivery of my daughter. It was one of those things where you feel like it's somebody else's life. You don't feel like, oh, this is really happening to me. I'd always had anxiety, especially around health-related things. I think a lot of people in health professions, it's a headache and you think it's like, okay, it's a brain tumor or something. But for me in pregnancy, it was really amplified because I knew too much. I've spent my entire adult life studying pregnancy, taking care of people when they're pregnant, and again, seeing those highs and seeing those lows and knowing what happens every week during development. It was just a crippling kind of anxiety that I never had experienced to that degree. And it was hard to tell people about it because when you're in my line of work and this is all you've ever done, people go to you as the expert and they're like, oh, pregnancy is a breeze for you. And physically, absolutely, I had a really easy pregnancy, but mentally it was some of the hardest times of my life. And I was almost embarrassed to tell people about that because of my background, because of the work that I do. This should have been easy for me. It should have been a cakewalk, and it wasn't. It was, every day thinking, am I doing something wrong?
It was extremely tough. 8.5 months pregnant, I got a promotion of a job that I wanted for like 5 years of networking, 5 years of like hearing no's on applications. So I was like, this is it. So it was this balance of, yes, I'm about to be a mother and I think I understand it. But then another part of me who was trying to hold on to the old Tamika, who was very career driven, so it was tough. And I stumbled a lot, but my family helped when I went back to work and trying to travel a little bit. But there got to a point where I was like, you know what, I need to stop and figure out what is going to be important, what is the priority. I don't know if it was pressure I've always put on myself of being the person that has it together, being the oldest of three, being the oldest cousin on my mom's side, being someone that's, I got my stuff together. I prided on having my stuff together, right? But to be humbled very quickly of, it's okay not to have it all together.
I'm thankful that I had him and that we were able to have the resources that we had. But, mentally, again, I think it just the fear of, I already have anxiety, I already have health-related anxiety, and now I gave birth in the middle of a pandemic. So talk about your anxiety, just keep going, getting what if she gets it? What if one of us get it? What do we do? There wasn't a vaccine, there wasn't really any treatment at that point. So it was terrifying. And so we didn't have visitors, we didn't let people over, we were just doing the best we could to keep her healthy. And at a time where so much felt out of our control, that was really all we could do.
Sometimes people don't know how to help you. And I can just say for my husband, he tried. He tried because he was new at this as well, but he knew there was something different about me. And he mentioned postpartum occasionally, and I thought he was just throwing it out like, oh, you're acting a little erratic. And at the time, I just brushed it off. But hindsight, again, on my journey of unpacking different emotions, like, you know what, maybe he was right. Maybe he did observe some things that just was a little unsettling.
I think as a society, we're not great about talking about mental health. We want to pretend that everything's okay, that, goodness, this is the happiest time of your life. How could you be depressed? Or how could you be dealing with a mental health diagnosis? And it's so much more complex than that.
In my mind, I was like, oh, the postpartum period is like, first couple of months with the baby. But I felt it like my son was 2 years old. And this is where I was running around trying to keep everyone together and manage the household and manage work. But when I was tired and I was exhausted and then having these exceptional reviews at work, but at the end of the year, I was empty. I was exhausted, I felt alone, and that work that once rewarded me wasn't doing it. The conversations my husband and I were having, just bumping heads, I said, I need to just stop, be still, and do some soul searching.
I was not planning on having kids, as you can imagine. At 27, I had said I wasn't going to have kids. So he was definitely a surprise. And he changed my whole life. Just going through the pregnancy, I remember it being a little difficult. And then when he was first born, that's when defects got involved in my life in the very beginning, because we had already had issues with substance abuse. So a lot of things that would be great memories, unfortunately, were a little foggy because of that.
By the time I found out I was pregnant, I was already kind of, pretty much into my addiction and kind of unable to make good, healthy choices for myself and for my children. Started with alcohol, and then sort of weed a little bit. And I don't remember ever learning or hearing anything about meth. And so when someone introduced me to it, I did it, and I automatically knew that I was in a lot of trouble.
Being normal or feeling normal was just not something that I ever experienced. I just always wanted something outside of myself to try to numb how I was feeling. It was just about getting high and feeling high. So,
Escape.
Yes. And then it turned into doing that no matter what, no matter what was going on or who it was affecting. And I was convinced that, well, my son was over here and he was taken care of, so it's not hurting anyone. I had convinced myself that it wasn't. And I really got to a point that I didn't care. Even if I was faced with, you're hurting your family, you're hurting your kids, like, it didn't matter to me.
It makes you feel like it's not okay to ask for the help that you need. Like, how am I gonna go to my mom and say, oh, like I'm doing meth. Like I don't think that that's a safe thing for me to do. Like, who does that? And I knew that my mom wouldn't understand. So one of the things that I really needed was just a safe place to talk about it and try to learn how to share my truth, because I had been hiding and disguising everything for so long that I really just wanted a safe place. I wanted so badly to be a mom, and I wanted so badly to enjoy every piece of that and to have like this great relationship. And my daughters were 4 and 7 when I got sober. So I didn't even know how to be a sober parent until they were 4 and 7. And now they're 19 and 22. So I've been living in recovery for over 15 years now. And so I've been able to change our lives and do something totally different, but I still carry, some of that guilt with me. And, I look back on those early years and I'm like, I would have given anything to have been able to been present and, and be the mom that I know I was created to be. And so, I've had a lot of therapy and done a lot of step work and done a lot, but, some of that I still carry with me.
I just know that all of those things compounded and made me realize at that point, I woke up and I was like, you know what? If I don't have my kids with me, or if I do, I just don't want to live like this anymore. I'm ready to stop. I'm ready to try to do something different.
If you've ever been in a pool of water and looked up to see the sun and the birds and the trees and all of that, and you're just below the surface and you can't breathe, that's what it feels like to be without your kids. I remember the night after the court date where they were officially at my mom's house. I remember like going around the house and like packing up their bags, and I was spraying my perfume on their stuffed animals and like putting my perfume on their socks because I was so afraid that they were gonna forget about me, and this disease is so baffling, It's like that you think the world out there was telling me if I loved my kids I would stop. And so there was so much of me that was so close to believing that. And once I got into recovery and I started to learn about mental health and I started to learn about substance use, and I started realizing that it didn't have anything to do with the love I had for my kids. It was that I was chemically changed. My brain was changed, and I was out of control, and I was, doing the very best I could with where I was at, and it was definitely not enough, and it wasn't the life that I wanted for my kids.
I think that people are finally willing to share their stories. I know for me, I have to, because that's been part of my healing, is to talk about it, and to let other new parents know that if they have anxiety, that they're not alone, or if they have depression, that they're not alone. And so for me, it's been really important that they're like, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna scream it from the rooftops. We're gonna talk about that perinatal mood and anxiety disorders are the #1 complication of pregnancy. It's so much focus on, is baby eating, is baby sleeping? Nobody really looks at mom and says like, but how are you?
I want mothers, I want you to understand how dynamic you really are. And I want you to understand and never forget your strength, your tenacity, your boldness, but also give yourself grace. You're not going to have all of the answers. We need you, we love you, and you're supported. And if there is a time where you don't feel like you have it together and your support team is not giving you what you need, there are confidential places that you can call and ask for help, because there are too many of us suffering in silence.
The beautiful thing about people who are also in recovery, either from a mental health or a substance use disorder, is that we'll crawl down in that hole with you. We'll sit with you. If you're not ready to come out of the hole, that's okay too. We'll sit with you until you are. And then when you are ready, I can show you the way out.
Is there anything I missed, Stephanie? Anything you need to ask?
No, it sounds like
Anything I didn't ask that you would like?
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Well, I hope that it helps someone. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for giving